My son-in-law deliberately dropped all the groceries on the floor and said, "Parasite, pick everything up right now." I refused, and at that moment he slapped me so hard I lost my balance. I smiled and made a call, and as he walked out of the supermarket, "I'm glad to have you here." Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. I never thought I'd be 60 years old, standing in the middle of a supermarket aisle with groceries scattered at my feet while my own son-in-law screamed at me like I was nothing. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I stared down at the crushed loaf of bread, the dented cans of soup rolling across the linoleum, the carton of eggs cracked open and seeping across the floor. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear exactly, but from something else. Something that had been building for 8 months. "Pick it up, Parasite," Albert hissed, his face inches from mine. His breath reeked of coffee and something bitter. "You heard me. Pick up every single item, now." I looked up at him. He was a big man, always had been. 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of build that made people step aside when he walked through a room. He knew how to use his size to intimidate, to control. I'd watched him do it to my daughter Claire for years now, though she'd never admit it. Around us, other shoppers had stopped. Some pretended to examine cereal boxes while watching from the corner of their eyes. Others simply stared, waiting to see what the old man would do. I could feel their judgment, their pity, their discomfort at witnessing something so ugly in the produce section of an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. "No," I said quietly. The word hung in the air between us. Albert's eyes widened slightly, like he couldn't quite believe what he'd heard. In all these months of living under his roof, of biting my tongue, of playing the grateful father-in-law, I had never once directly defied him. "What did you just say to me?" His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. I said no. My voice was steady now, clearer. "I'm not picking them up." Something shifted in his expression. The mask of control slipped, and underneath it was pure rage. I saw his hand come up, saw it arc through the air, but I didn't move. Couldn't move, really. My body had become too familiar with freezing, with taking whatever came. The slap connected with the side of my face, hard enough that my glasses went flying. The sound echoed through the aisle like a gunshot. My head snapped to the side, and I stumbled backward, my hip hitting the edge of a shopping cart. Pain bloomed across my cheek, sharp and hot. For a moment, everything went quiet. The buzzing lights, the elevator music, the shocked gasps of the witnesses, all of it faded into a strange, muffled silence. I touched my face, felt the heat radiating from where he'd hit me, tasted copper in my mouth where I'd bitten my tongue, and then I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't even a bitter one. It was the smile of someone who had finally been given exactly what they needed. The smile of someone whose plan had just fallen perfectly into place. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I dialed a number I'd saved 2 weeks ago, held the phone to my ear, and never took my eyes off Albert's face. I watched the confusion flicker there, then the first hint of uncertainty. "It's Roger," I said into the phone. "He's here, just like I told you he would be." I hung up, bent down slowly, picked up my glasses. One lens was cracked, but I could still see through them well enough. I straightened, met Albert's eyes again. He was looking around now, noticing all the phones pointed in our direction, all the people recording. The reality of what he'd just done in public was starting to sink in. "You crazy old man," he started, his voice trying for confidence but missing by a mile. "You can't just—" "Let's go check out," I interrupted, my voice calm, almost pleasant. "I believe you have somewhere to be." I picked up my basket, the one I'd been carrying before he knocked it out of my hands, started walking toward the front of the store. Behind me, I heard Albert following, his footsteps heavy and uncertain. He was still talking, still trying to control the narrative, but his words were just noise now. At the checkout, the young cashier looked nervous. Her hands shook as she scanned my items. She'd seen everything. Everyone had seen everything. "Are you okay, sir?" she whispered as she bagged my groceries. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Thank you for asking." I paid cash, $43.17, picked up my bags and walked toward the exit. Albert was still behind me, still talking. Something about how I'd provoked him, how I was always causing problems, how Claire would hear about this. The automatic doors slid open. The afternoon sun hit my face, warm despite the autumn chill. And there, standing beside a black sedan in the parking lot, were three men in dark security uniforms. I recognized two of them immediately, Marcus and James, men I'd worked with 20 years ago. The third was younger, but he had the same look about him, the same military bearing. They weren't smiling. I stopped walking, turned to watch as Albert emerged from the store behind me. He didn't see them at first. He was too busy trying to grab my arm, still talking, still threatening. "Mr. Whitmore," Marcus called out, his voice cutting through Albert's tirade. Albert's head snapped up. He saw them then, saw the way they were standing, blocking his path to his car, saw the badges on their belts, saw Marcus holding up his phone, the video already playing, the sound of that slap echoing across the parking lot. "We need you to come with us," James said, stepping forward, not asking, telling. Albert's face went white, then red, then white again. "What is this? You can't just—" "We can," Marcus interrupted. "And we are. The store manager has requested your removal from the premises, and Roger here has some things he'd like to discuss with the police about what just happened inside." I reached into my wallet, pulled out a business card. It was worn at the edges, one I'd been carrying for 2 weeks now, waiting for this exact moment. I held it up so Albert could see it. It was Marcus's card. Security consultant, former military police, current head of security for the entire shopping district. I'd called him 3 weeks ago, told him I had a son-in-law who was becoming dangerous, asked him if he could help me, if there was a way to document what was happening without making things worse. Marcus had given me this card and told me to carry it always, told me that when the moment came, when Albert finally crossed the line where witnesses could see, I should call. And I had. Albert looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment he realized he'd been played. That the weak old man he'd been tormenting wasn't weak at all, just patient. "You set me up," he breathed, his voice cracking. I adjusted my cracked glasses and picked up my grocery bags. "No, Albert, I just gave you enough rope. You hanged yourself." Marcus and James moved in on either side of him. The third security guard was already on his phone, presumably with the police. Other shoppers had gathered at a safe distance, still filming, still watching. I walked to my car, put my groceries in the trunk. My face still throbbed where he'd hit me. My hands finally started to shake now that it was over. But underneath the pain, underneath the adrenaline, there was something else. Relief. Because this wasn't just about today. This was about 8 months of careful planning, of documenting, of waiting for Albert to reveal exactly who he was in a way that no one could deny. This was about protecting my daughter, even if she didn't know she needed protecting yet. I got in my car, sat behind the wheel, and watched through my rearview mirror as the police arrived. Watched as they talked to Marcus, to James, to the witnesses. Watched as Albert gestured wildly, trying to explain, trying to justify. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Where are you? Albert said you had an episode at the store?" I stared at the message. Of course he'd already called her. Of course he'd already started spinning his version of events. That was always his way. I typed back, "Come to the police station on 5th Street. We need to talk. All of us." Then I started my engine and drove away, leaving Albert in the parking lot with his excuses and his rage, and the beginning of consequences he never saw coming. The game had finally begun. 8 months ago, I'd been living in the house Martha and I built together. The one where we raised Claire, where we celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where we grew old together until the cancer took her away from me. 2 years of widowhood had taught me that grief doesn't follow a schedule. Some days I could breathe, other days. The silence of that empty house pressed down on me until I thought I might suffocate in it. I'd wake up reaching for Martha, forgetting for those first few seconds that she was gone, and then remembering would hit me all over again like a fresh wound. Claire called me every day those first few months. She'd check in, make sure I was eating, try to coax me out of the house. She meant well, she always meant well. But I could hear the worry in her voice, the way it got higher when she asked if I was taking care of myself. I knew she was talking to Albert about me, discussing what to do about Dad. The fall happened on a Tuesday. I was carrying laundry down to the basement. Wasn't paying attention, missed a step. Next thing I knew, I was lying at the bottom of the stairs, my hips screaming in pain, unable to move. I laid there for 3 hours before Claire came by for her weekly visit and found me. The hospital, the surgery, the recovery, it all happened so fast. The doctors said I'd heal fine, but I'd need help for a while. Couldn't live alone, they said. Not safely. Not yet. Claire sat beside my hospital bed, holding my hand, and said the words I'd been dreading. Dad, come live with us, just until you're back on your feet. Albert and I have plenty of room. I should have said no. Every instinct I had screamed at me to refuse, to figure something else out, but she looked so hopeful, so determined to take care of me the way I'd taken care of her all those years, and I was tired, so tired. Okay, I said, just until I'm better. That was my first mistake. The first few weeks at their house were fine. Claire fussed over me, made sure I had everything I needed. Albert was cordial. He'd ask about my day, help me up the stairs to the guest room they'd set up for me. He even joked about having a built-in babysitter once they had kids. But then I mentioned the land. Martha's parents had left her 40 acres up in Montana, wild land bordering national forest. We'd always meant to build a cabin there, spend our retirement hiking and watching elk, but we never got the chance. The land just sat there, beautiful and untouched, waiting for a future that would never come. I was sitting at their kitchen table going through some paperwork my lawyer had sent over, when Albert asked what I was looking at. Just estate stuff, I said. My lawyer thinks I should consider selling Martha's land. Says it's worth quite a bit now. Some developer wants to buy it, put in luxury cabins, offering $180,000. I watched Albert's face change. It was subtle, just a flicker of something behind his eyes. Interest, calculation, the way a shark might look at blood in the water. That's a lot of money, Roger, he said, sitting down across from me. You thinking about it? I don't know. Feels wrong somehow, selling the last piece of Martha. He nodded sympathetically, but that look stayed in his eyes. Well, you've got time to decide. No rush. But there was a rush. I just didn't know it yet. Within a week, things started changing. Small things at first. Albert began answering my phone when I wasn't in the room, taking messages that never got passed along. My mail started arriving opened. He'd explain it away, say he thought it was a bill that needed immediate attention, that he was just trying to help. Then my friend stopped calling. My weekly poker game with the guys from the Veterans Hall canceled. Sunday dinners with my sister Ruth, somehow always conflicting with something Albert and Claire had planned. I started feeling like a ghost in their house, invisible unless they needed something. One morning, about 3 months in, I came downstairs to find Albert at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. Claire was already at work. She'd taken on extra shifts at the hospital, said they needed the money. I'd find out later why they needed it so badly. Morning, Roger, Albert said too cheerfully. I've been looking at your finances. You know, trying to help you stay organized. My finances, the ones I'd managed perfectly well for 40 years. I noticed you're still paying for that storage unit, the one with Martha's things. He pushed a paper across to me. It's costing you $120 a month. Don't you think it's time to let some of that stuff go? Maybe sell some of it? I stared at the storage receipt. That unit held Martha's art supplies, her mother's china, boxes of photographs. Our life together, packed away because I couldn't bear to look at it yet, but couldn't bear to lose it either. I'm not ready, I said quietly. Albert sighed like I was being unreasonable. Roger, you're burning through money on sentiment. That storage unit, the land taxes on the Montana property, your pension is good, but it's not unlimited. Maybe it's time to make some practical decisions. Practical decisions. That became his favorite phrase. Over the next few weeks, Albert inserted himself deeper into my life. He offered to help with my banking. Said it would be easier if we consolidated accounts, just temporarily. He suggested I give him power of attorney, just in case something happened, just to make Claire's life easier. I said no every time. And every time I did, he'd get a little colder, a little more distant. Then the bills started arriving. Late notices for utilities I thought Albert was paying. Collection calls for credit cards I'd never opened. Albert would intercept them, explain them away. Must be identity theft, he'd say. These things happen to elderly people all the time. Don't worry, I'll handle it. But I started keeping my own records, writing down every conversation, every strange occurrence. Martha always said I had a cop's mind, always looking for patterns, and I was seeing one now. The real shift happened 4 months in. I overheard Albert on the phone in his study. The door was cracked, and I was walking past on my way to the bathroom. Look, the old man isn't budging on the land, he was saying, his voice frustrated. I've tried everything. But once we get the power of attorney, it won't matter what he wants. Claire will sign whatever I need her to sign. She trusts me. My blood went cold. I stood there in the hallway, barely breathing. The Montana property is the key, he continued. 180 grand. That's just the starting offer. I've got other developers interested. Could go as high as 250, plus whatever's left in his accounts after we streamline things. I heard him laugh then, a sound with no warmth in it. Roger's not going to be a problem much longer. Claire's already talking about memory care facilities. A few more incidents, a few more doctor's appointments where he seems confused, and we'll have everything we need. His pension, the land, all of it. The old bastard should have stayed in his own house. I walked away as quietly as I could, my heart hammering. Made it to the bathroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the tub. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. He was planning to steal everything, not just the land, not just money, my autonomy, my dignity, my relationship with my daughter. He was going to make me disappear, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a confused old man no one would believe. And he was using Claire to do it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. I thought about Martha, about what she would say if she could see what was happening. She'd tell me to fight. She'd tell me to protect our daughter, even if it meant protecting her from her own choices. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Albert. I wasn't going to tell Claire, not yet. She was so deep in his manipulation, she wouldn't believe me. She'd think I was confused, paranoid, exactly what Albert was trying to convince her I was. No, I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. And I needed a plan. I started small. Got a new phone, a prepaid one Albert didn't know about. Started documenting everything, times, dates, conversations. I recorded phone calls when I could. I kept copies of every bill, every bank statement, every piece of mail that came to the house. I reached out to old friends, the ones Albert had cut me off from. Marcus from the security firm, James from my army days, Ruth, my sister, who I hadn't spoken to in months. I told them what was happening. I asked for help. And slowly, carefully, I built my case. Every piece of evidence, every witness, every recorded conversation. I waited for Albert to make his move because I knew he would. Men like him always did. They got confident, sloppy, thought they were untouchable. I just needed him to reveal himself in a way Claire couldn't deny. That morning at the supermarket, when he knocked the groceries from my hands, when he called me a parasite, when he raised his hand to hit me, I knew this was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, not because I wanted to be hurt, but because I needed witnesses. I needed proof that would hold up anywhere, that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. So I took the hit, smiled, and made the call. Because sometimes the only way to win is to let your enemy think they've already won, right up until the moment you take everything away from them. Now, driving toward the police station with my face still throbbing, I pulled out my real phone and made another call. Ruth, it's Roger. I need you to come to 5th Street Station. Bring the folder. The one with all the documents. It's time. My sister's voice was steady. I've been waiting for you to say that. I'm already on my way. I hung up and drove on. Behind me, somewhere in that parking lot, Albert was learning what it felt like to lose control. But this was just the beginning. He'd taken 8 months of my life. I was about to take everything from him. The truth was finally coming out, and I was going to make sure everyone heard it. Albert came home 3 hours after the supermarket incident. I heard his car pull into the driveway, the engine cutting off, then silence. He sat out there for almost 10 minutes before finally coming inside. I was in the living room, an ice pack pressed to my face where he'd hit me, waiting. The door opened and closed quietly, too quietly. Albert was never quiet when he came home. He liked to announce his presence, liked the way it made people react, straighten up, pay attention. He appeared in the living room doorway, and for a moment we just looked at each other. His tie was loosened, his hair messed up like he'd been running his hands through it. His eyes were red, whether from anger or something else I couldn't tell. "Where's Claire?" he asked. His voice was careful, controlled. "She's on her way. Should be here any minute." He nodded slowly, then walked to the bar cart and poured himself a whiskey. Drank it in one gulp. Poured another. His hands were shaking slightly. Good. He should be shaking. "Those security guards," he said, not looking at me. "Friends of yours?" "Used to work with them, long time ago." And you just happened to call them right before I showed up at the store. No, Albert. I called them 3 weeks ago, told them I had a situation, asked them to keep an eye out. He turned then, and I saw the rage flickering behind his carefully maintained composure. You set me up. I documented your behavior. There's a difference. He laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Documented. Right. You think you're so smart, old man. You think this changes anything? I think it changes everything. Before he could respond, we heard Claire's car pull up. Albert's expression shifted immediately, smoothing into something else, something wounded and confused. I watched the transformation with a sick fascination. This was what Claire saw every day, this mask he wore so perfectly. Claire burst through the door, her work bag still slung over her shoulder. She looked exhausted. She always looked exhausted these days. Her eyes went immediately to the ice pack on my face, then to Albert. What happened? She asked, her voice high with stress. Albert called me, said Dad had some kind of episode at the grocery store, that he attacked him. I lowered the ice pack slowly, let her see the bruise blooming across my cheek, the split in my lip. Watched her face go pale. Dad, oh my God, what happened to your face? Your husband hit me, I said quietly, in the middle of the supermarket, in front of about 20 witnesses. Claire's head snapped toward Albert. He already had his hands up, his expression pained. Honey, it wasn't like that, he started, his voice gentle, reasonable. Your dad, he was acting strange, confused. He dropped his groceries, and then when I tried to help him, he started yelling at me, accusing me of things. I tried to calm him down, and he took a swing at me. I defended myself. My hand accidentally caught his face. I almost admired how smoothly the lies came, how he wove them together into something that sounded plausible if you didn't know the truth. Claire looked between us, her eyes filling with tears. Dad, is that true? Were you confused? No, sweetheart. I wasn't confused. I was buying groceries. Albert showed up, knocked everything out of my hands, called me a parasite, and when I refused to pick them up, he hit me, hard enough to knock my glasses off. Albert shook his head sadly. Claire, honey, this is exactly what we've been afraid of, the memory issues, the paranoia. I talked to you about this last week, remember? How he's been getting worse? And there it was, the setup I hadn't even known was happening. Claire's face crumpled. I know you have, she whispered. I just didn't want to believe it was getting this bad. My chest tightened. Claire, I don't have memory issues. I'm not paranoid. Your husband has been lying to you. Dad, please. Her voice broke. Dr. Morrison said this might happen. The defensiveness, the accusations, it's part of the decline. What are you talking about? What doctor? Albert moved closer to Claire, putting his arm around her shoulders. I took him to see a specialist 2 weeks ago, while you were at work. He was having trouble remembering conversations, getting dates confused. Dr. Morrison ran some tests. I felt the floor drop out from under me. I never went to any doctor with you. See, Albert said gently to Claire. He doesn't even remember the appointment. Because there was no appointment. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Claire, this is what he does. He makes things up, creates this narrative where I'm the one who's losing it, so you won't believe me when I tell you what he's really doing. Claire pulled away from Albert slightly. What do you mean, what he's really doing? Albert's jaw tightened. Honey, don't let him manipulate you. This is classic behavior. They lash out at the people trying to help them. I'm not lashing out. I'm telling you the truth. Albert has been stealing from me, from us. He's been opening credit cards in my name, forging my signature on documents. He's planning to force me into a home so he can take control of the Montana land. The words tumbled out faster than I meant them to. I watched Claire's face, searching for any sign that she believed me, that some part of her recognized the truth. But all I saw was pity and fear. The Montana land, she repeated softly. Dad, you've been obsessing about that land for months. Albert said you keep accusing him of trying to steal it. Because he is. No, Roger, I'm not. Albert's voice was so calm, so reasonable. I've been trying to help you manage your finances because you kept losing track of bills. Claire can show you the stack of late notices we've been dealing with. Those bills exist because you created them. You opened accounts in my name. Claire pressed her hands to her temples. Stop, both of you. Just stop. She looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes made my stomach turn. She didn't believe me. My own daughter didn't believe me. Dad, I think maybe we need to talk about other living arrangements. Somewhere where you can get the care you need. You mean a nursing home? The words tasted like ashes. That's what this is about. He wants me locked away so he can do whatever he wants with my money, with Martha's land. Albert sighed heavily. Claire, I hate to do this, but I think you need to see something. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through it, then handed it to her. This is the medical report from Dr. Morrison, the cognitive tests, the recommendations. I watched Claire read, watched her face crumble further with each line. Whatever was on that screen, whatever Albert had fabricated, it was convincing. This says you're showing signs of early dementia, Claire whispered, looking up at me with devastated eyes, that you're at risk of harming yourself or others. It's fake, Claire. All of it. There is no Dr. Morrison. Or if there is, I never saw him. But even as I said it, I could see I'd already lost. Albert had been building this narrative for months, laying groundwork I hadn't even noticed. Every time he told Claire I was forgetful, every bill he said I'd forgotten to pay, every appointment he claimed I'd missed, it had all been leading to this moment. I think your father needs to rest, Albert said gently. This has been stressful for everyone. Claire, why don't you help him upstairs? I'll make some calls, see about getting him an evaluation at Memorial. They have an excellent psychiatric unit. Psychiatric unit, I repeated. The room felt like it was tilting. You're going to have me committed. No one's having you committed, Dad, Claire said, but her voice wavered. We just need to get you help, professional help. Albert smiled at me over her shoulder. It was a small smile, barely there, but I saw it, saw the triumph in it. He thought he'd won. Thought he'd backed me into a corner where nothing I said would matter because I'd be dismissed as a confused old man. I stood up slowly, my hip protesting, walked to where my jacket hung by the door, reached into the inside pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder, the one I'd been carrying for 2 months. Before you make any calls, I said quietly, I think you both need to hear something. Albert's smile disappeared. What is that? I pressed play. His voice filled the room, tinny but clear through the small speaker. Look, the old man isn't budging on the land. I've tried everything. But once we get the power of attorney, it won't matter what he wants. Claire will sign whatever I need her to sign. She trusts me. Claire's head snapped up, her eyes wide. The recording continued. The Montana property is the key. 180 grand. That's just the starting offer. I've got other developers interested. Could go as high as 250. Plus whatever's left in his accounts after we streamline things. Turn it off, Albert said, his voice low and dangerous. But I didn't. I let it play. Let Claire hear her husband laugh as he said, Roger's not going to be a problem much longer. Claire's already talking about memory care facilities. A few more incidents, a few more doctor's appointments where he seems confused, and we'll have everything we need. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire was staring at Albert, her face completely drained of color. Tell me that's not you. Tell me that's not your voice. Albert's careful mask cracked. Honey, I can explain. He edited it, took things out of context. Out of context? Her voice rose. What context makes that okay? Were you planning to steal from my father? Were you really trying to have him declared incompetent? I was protecting us, protecting our future. Albert's composure was shattering now. Your father is sitting on a fortune while we're drowning in debt. Debt that exists because you won't ask him for help, because you're too proud. So you decided to just take it? Claire's hands were shaking. To gaslight him? To make me think he was losing his mind? I did what I had to do, what you were too weak to do. The words hung in the air. I watched my daughter's face transform, watched something break and then harden in her eyes. Get out, she whispered. What? Get out of my house. Now. Albert's face flushed red. This is my house too. You can't just... The house is in my name only. Because you had bad credit, remember? Because you couldn't qualify for the mortgage. So yes, I can. Her voice was stronger now, steadier. Get out. Take whatever you can carry. Everything else we'll deal with through lawyers. Claire, baby, please, let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. You tried to steal from my father. You abused him. You lied to me for months. Years, probably. I want you out. I watched Albert realize he'd lost. Watched the anger and desperation war across his face. He looked at me, and the hatred in his eyes was pure and cold. This isn't over, old man. he hissed. Yes, I said quietly, it is. Albert grabbed his keys, his wallet, and stormed out. The door slammed behind him hard enough to rattle the windows. Then it was just Claire and me standing in the wreckage of her marriage and my near destruction. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. I should have believed you. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it was okay. But it wasn't okay. And we both needed to face that truth before we could move forward. 3 days after Albert left, Claire sat at the kitchen table surrounded by papers, bank statements, credit card bills, loan documents. Her laptop was open, showing spreadsheet after spreadsheet. She'd barely slept, barely eaten, just sat there piecing together the full extent of Albert's deception. I made coffee, set a cup beside her. She didn't look up. Dad, she said finally, her voice hoarse. How much did you know? I sat down across from her. Not everything. Not until I started digging. She pointed at one of the statements. This credit card, it's in your name. $47,000 charged to it. Did you know about this one? No. This loan, $22,000. Your signature, but you didn't sign it, did you? No. She laughed, but it was a broken sound. He forged your signature on at least 11 different documents. Opened 6 credit cards in your name. Took out 3 loans using your information, and I didn't see any of it. I was living with him, sleeping next to him every night, and I didn't see it. He was careful, Claire. This kind of manipulation, it's calculated. He studied you, studied me, knew exactly what buttons to push. She dropped her head into her hands. I kept telling myself he was stressed, that work was hard, that he just needed support. Every time you tried to tell me something was wrong, he'd already planted the seed in my head that you were getting forgetful, that you were declining. And I believed him because it was easier than facing the truth. I reached across the table, covered her hand with mine. He's good at what he does. That's not your fault. But it is, Dad. I chose him over you. Every single time I chose to believe him instead of you. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Ruth's name flashed on the screen. I answered, putting it on speaker. Roger, it's done, Ruth said without preamble. I met with the lawyer. We've got everything organized. The recorded conversations, the forged documents, the financial records. It's airtight. Claire looked up, her eyes red and swollen. What's airtight? Ruth's voice softened slightly. Hi, Claire, honey. Your dad and I have been building a case against Albert for the last 2 months. We've got enough evidence to bury him. A case? What kind of case? I looked at my daughter. Identity theft, fraud, elder abuse, forgery. That's just the start. Ruth's lawyer thinks we could add coercion and financial exploitation. Claire stared at me. You've been planning this? For 2 months. I needed to protect you. Protect us both. I couldn't just accuse him without proof. You wouldn't have believed me. So you built a case, like you used to do. She let out a shaky breath. When you were in investigations, Ruth continued, the DA's office is interested, very interested. This kind of systematic elder abuse, it's something they want to prosecute, especially with the money involved. We're talking $70,000, maybe $80,000 in fraudulent charges and loans. That's serious prison time. Claire went even paler. Prison? He committed multiple felonies, Claire, Ruth said gently. This isn't just a domestic issue. He stole from your father. Repeatedly. Deliberately. The call ended with Ruth promising to send over the final documentation. Claire sat in silence, staring at the papers spread before her. I thought he loved me, she finally whispered. I really thought he did. Maybe he did, in his own way, but it wasn't healthy. It wasn't real. She picked up one of the credit card statements, studied it like she was trying to decode a foreign language. This charged $5,000 at a casino in Atlantic City. We've never been to Atlantic City. Or this one, $3,000 at some jewelry store. I never got any jewelry. I watched her connecting the dots, seeing the full picture of who Albert really was. It was painful to witness, like watching someone wake up from surgery and realize how badly they'd been hurt. There's more, I said quietly. Things I found out yesterday. She looked up at me, and I saw fear in her eyes. What else could there possibly be? I pulled out another folder, one I'd been keeping separate. Albert has another credit card, one that's actually in his name. I got a friend at the bank to pull the records, unofficial. The charges go back 3 years. What kind of charges? Hotels, restaurants, flowers, all in cities where he said he was traveling for work. I paused. Always for two people. The color drained from her face. He was cheating on me. I don't know for certain, but the pattern suggests it. She stood up abruptly, walked to the sink, braced herself against it. I could see her shoulders shaking. 3 years. While I was working double shifts to pay our bills that he created, he was spending money we didn't have on someone else. Claire. No. She turned, and her face was different now, harder. No more excuses. No more trying to understand him or justify his behavior. He's a thief and a liar, and I want him prosecuted. I want him to pay for everything he did to you, to us. I stood slowly. Are you sure? Once we start this, there's no going back. It'll get ugly. He'll fight. He'll try to make you look bad, make me look incompetent. Let him try. Her voice was steel now. I've got the evidence. You've got the recordings. We've got witnesses from the supermarket. What's he got? Lies and a fake doctor's report. She was right. We did have everything we needed, but I needed her to understand the full scope of what was coming. There's something else you should know, I said carefully. The Montana land. Albert's been in contact with developers, telling them he has power of attorney over my assets. He's already accepted a preliminary offer of $250,000, signed a contract that's completely invalid, but he's accepted money for it. $25,000 up front. Claire's eyes widened. He took money for land he doesn't own? He did. And when the developers find out the contract is fraudulent, they're going to want their money back. Money Albert has already spent. On what? I pulled out more statements. Gambling mostly. Some of it on his other woman. Some on luxury items, clothes, watches. He was building a whole other life with your money, my money, and money he stole from developers. Claire sat back down heavily. How did I not see any of this? Because you loved him, because you wanted to believe the best. That's not a weakness, sweetheart. That's who you are. She wiped her eyes angrily. Well, it ends now. Call Ruth back. Tell her we're moving forward with everything. I want to file charges. I want a restraining order. I want every single thing he did, documented and prosecuted. I pulled out my phone, but before I could dial, it rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Roger Whitmore? A man's voice, official sounding. Speaking. This is Detective James Chen with the Fraud Division. We've received some information regarding identity theft and financial crimes committed against you. We'd like to meet with you and go over the details. I met Claire's eyes. The police are already involved. Ruth must have contacted them, Claire said. Detective Chen continued. We understand you have documentation and recordings. We'd like to examine everything you have. This could be a significant case. When would you like to meet? How about tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock at the station? And Mr. Whitmore, bring everything. Bank statements, credit reports, recordings, forged documents, everything. After I hung up, Claire was already gathering papers, organizing them into folders. Her hands were steady now, her jaw set. This was the daughter I'd raised, strong, determined, not willing to be a victim. We need to go through all of this tonight, she said. Make sure everything is organized, chronological. The detective needs to see the pattern, how Albert built this over time. We worked until almost midnight. Spread across the dining room table was the complete story of Albert's deception. Every forged signature, every fraudulent charge, every lie he'd told. It was overwhelming in its scope. Claire picked up the recording device, the one with Albert's voice admitting everything. Can I listen to it again? Claire, you don't need to torture yourself. Yes, I do. I need to hear it. Need to remember exactly who he is so I don't waver when this gets hard. I handed her the device. Watched her face as she listened to her husband plot against me, against her. Watched the last remnants of whatever love she'd felt for him die in her eyes. When it finished, she set it down carefully. Tomorrow, when we meet with the detective, I'm telling them everything. Every time Albert isolated you, every time he made me doubt you, every manipulation, all of it. You don't have to do that. You're not responsible for his actions. No, but I enabled them. By not seeing, by not questioning, I made it possible. I need to own that. And I need to make sure he never does this to anyone else. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw Martha in her face. That same determination, that same strength. Albert had tried to break both of us, but he'd failed. We were still standing, still fighting. Your mother would be proud of you, I said quietly. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. I hope so, because I'm about to destroy my husband's life, and I need to believe I'm doing the right thing. You are. She nodded, then went back to organizing papers. I watched her work, methodical and thorough, and I knew Albert had made a fatal mistake. He'd underestimated her, underestimated both of us. He thought we'd be easy targets, thought we'd never fight back. Tomorrow we'd show him exactly how wrong he was. Tomorrow the evidence we'd gathered would speak for itself, and Albert's carefully constructed house of lies would come crashing down around him. But tonight we just worked in silence, building our case, preparing for war. Because that's what this was now. Not just about getting justice, not just about recovering stolen money. This was about reclaiming our dignity, our lives, our family. And we were going to win. The detective's office was smaller than I expected. Gray walls, fluorescent lighting, a desk covered in file folders and coffee-stained papers. Detective Chen was younger than he'd sounded on the phone, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Claire sat beside me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She'd barely spoken during the drive over, just stared out the window, her jaw clenched, lost in thoughts I couldn't reach. Detective Chen spread our evidence across his desk. Bank statements, forged signatures, the recordings, everything we'd compiled over the past months. He went through it methodically, occasionally making notes, his expression growing grimmer with each document. "Mr. Whitmore," he said finally, "this is one of the most comprehensive elder abuse cases I've seen. Your son-in-law was systematic, patient. He built a framework of lies over months, maybe years." "Can you prosecute?" Claire asked, her voice tight. "Absolutely. Identity theft, fraud, forgery, financial exploitation of an elderly person. We're looking at multiple felonies. If convicted, he's facing serious prison time. Minimum 8 years, possibly 15, depending on how the charges stack." 15 years. I watched Claire absorb that number, watched her realize that the man she'd married, the man she'd shared a life with, was going to prison. Not might go, was going. "There's something else," Detective Chen continued. "The developers he scammed with the fake land deal, they filed their own complaint. That's wire fraud on top of everything else. The FBI might get involved." Claire let out a slow breath. "Good." The detective looked at her carefully. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask you some questions. They might be difficult." "Go ahead. Did you ever witness your husband forging your father's signature?" "No, but I didn't pay attention either. He handled a lot of the household paperwork. I trusted him." "Did he ever ask you to sign documents relating to your father's finances?" Claire hesitated. I saw her mind working, going back through memories she'd probably tried to bury. "Yes," she said quietly. "About 6 months ago. He said Dad needed someone to co-sign on a loan refinance, that it would lower the monthly payments. I signed without really reading it." Detective Chen made a note. "Do you remember what bank?" "First National, I think." He pulled out one of the documents from our pile. "This one?" Claire looked at it and I watched her face crumble. "That's not a refinance. That's a new loan, for $30,000. Your signature gave it legitimacy, made the bank less likely to question it." "Oh God." She pressed her hands to her face. "I helped him steal from my own father." "Claire," I started, but Detective Chen cut me off gently. "Mrs. Patterson, you were a victim of manipulation. Your husband used your trust, your love, to commit fraud. That's on him, not you." But I could see she didn't believe it, could see the guilt settling over her like a shroud. The detective continued asking questions, building his case. How long had I lived with them? When did I first notice problems? Did I have documentation of everything Albert had taken? The questioning went on for over 2 hours. Finally, Detective Chen closed his notebook. "I have enough to move forward. I'll be getting a warrant for Albert Patterson's arrest, probably by end of day tomorrow." "That fast?" Claire looked up, startled. "The evidence is solid, and given the amounts involved and the fact that he's already spent money from the fraudulent land deal, he's a flight risk. We need to move quickly." We stood to leave. As we reached the door, Detective Chen called out, "Mrs. Patterson, one more thing. Your husband will likely try to contact you. Try to convince you to drop the charges, or to paint himself as the victim. Don't engage, document everything, but don't respond." Claire nodded, but I could see her hands shaking as we walked out. In the car, she finally broke down, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I pulled over into a parking lot, let her cry. There was nothing I could say that would make this better. She'd married a monster, and now she had to live with that knowledge. I loved him, Dad, she choked out between sobs. I really loved him. How could I love someone who could do this? Love doesn't come with a manual, sweetheart. You loved who you thought he was. That person was worth loving, but he wasn't real. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, all the times you tried to tell me something was wrong and I dismissed you. I chose him over you, over and over again. You were being manipulated. He's had years to perfect this. She wiped her eyes roughly. That doesn't make it okay. I should have protected you. You're my father. You raised me alone after Mom died, worked 2 jobs to put me through college, and when you needed me, I failed you. You didn't fail me. You're here now. That's what matters. But even as I said it, I could see the guilt eating at her. This was going to be a long road back for both of us. My phone rang. Ruth's name flashed on the screen. Roger, you need to come to the house. Albert's here. My blood went cold. What do you mean he's there? He showed up 20 minutes ago, demanding to talk to Claire. I told him to leave, but he's refusing. Says he'll camp out on the lawn until Claire agrees to see him. There are neighbors starting to come out, watching. I looked at Claire. Her face had gone pale. He's at the house. Tell him I'll talk to him, she said, her voice hollow. Claire, no. The detective said, I need to do this, Dad. I need to face him. I need to hear what lies he's going to tell me now that everything's out in the open. I didn't like it, but I understood. Sometimes you need to look the devil in the eye before you can truly walk away. When we pulled up to the house, Albert was sitting on the front steps. He looked terrible. Unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes red. He stood up as soon as he saw us, started walking toward the car. Stay in the car, I told Claire. Let him come to you. Albert reached Claire's window. She rolled it down halfway, keeping the barrier between them. Baby, please, he started, his voice cracking. We need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Claire repeated flatly. That's what you're calling this? I can explain everything. The money, the documents, all of it. Just give me a chance. Explain how you forged my father's signature, how you opened credit cards in his name, how you tried to sell land you don't own. Albert's jaw tightened. I did it for us, for our future. Your father was sitting on all that money, all those assets, and we were drowning. I was trying to save us. By stealing, by lying, by trying to have my father declared incompetent. He is incompetent. He's old, Claire. He's not thinking clearly. Someone needed to manage his affairs, and you were too weak to do it. The mask was slipping now. I could see the real Albert emerging, the one who'd been hidden under all the charm and manipulation. Get away from my car, Claire said, her voice like ice. No, not until you listen. Not until you understand that I did this because I love you, because I love us. Your father has poisoned you against me, but baby, we can fix this. We can work through this. The police are getting a warrant for your arrest. Did you know that? Albert's face went white, then red. You called the police? My father called them, with evidence, recordings, documents, witnesses, everything you did, it's all there. And they're coming for you, probably tomorrow. He stepped back from the car, his expression twisting. You bitch. You ungrateful bitch. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? Everything you've done? You stole from my father. You manipulated me. You destroyed our life together with your lies. I gave you everything. He was yelling now, loud enough that Ruth and several neighbors had come out of their houses. I married you when no one else wanted you, took care of you, and this is how you thank me? By siding with that senile old man? I started to get out of the car, but Claire grabbed my arm. No, Dad, this is my fight. She got out, faced Albert directly. She was shaking, but her voice was steady. You never gave me anything, Albert. You took my trust, my money, my father's dignity. You took years of my life and filled them with lies. But you can't take any more, because I see you now. I see exactly what you are. Albert lunged forward, and for a moment I thought he was going to hit her. But Ruth was there, stepping between them, her phone already out and recording. That's close enough, Ruth said firmly. You've got 5 seconds to get off this property before I call the police myself. Albert looked around wildly, at the neighbors watching, at Ruth recording, at Claire standing there with tears streaming down her face but her spine straight. He was cornered, and he knew it. This isn't over, he snarled. You think you've won, but you haven't. I'll fight this. I'll make both of you regret this. You already did that, Claire said quietly, when you decided my father was worth less than money. Albert stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked to his car, peeled out of the driveway with a screech of tires. The neighbors slowly dispersed, whispering among themselves. Claire stood in the middle of the lawn, watching him drive away. Then her legs gave out. I caught her before she hit the ground, held her while she sobbed against my shoulder. It's over, I murmured. It's finally over. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The legal battle was just beginning. The emotional aftermath would take years to process. Claire's trust was shattered, not just in Albert, but in her own judgment. Ruth helped me get Claire inside, settled her on the couch, made tea that none of us drank. We just sat there in silence, the three of us, survivors of a war we'd never wanted to fight. The detective was right, Ruth said finally. Albert's going to fight this. He's going to try to drag you both through the mud, make you look like the villains. Let him try, Claire said, her voice empty. I've got nothing left to lose. He already took everything. But that wasn't quite true. She still had me. She still had Ruth. She still had a chance to rebuild, to recover. It would take time, would take work, but it was possible. I just hoped she could see that, hoped she wouldn't let Albert's final act of cruelty be convincing her that she deserved this pain. Outside, the sun was setting, another day ending, another one beginning, and somewhere out there, Albert was planning his next move, his next manipulation, but this time, we'd be ready. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of my new apartment, watching the morning light filter through the windows. It was small, just a one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building near the park, but it was mine. My name on the lease, my furniture, my life. The Montana land was still mine too. The developers had backed out once they learned about the fraud, demanded their $25,000 back. Albert didn't have it, of course. That became another charge, another count of theft. The property sat untouched, waiting. Maybe someday I'd build that cabin Martha and I had dreamed about. Maybe I'd just leave it wild. Either way, the choice was mine to make. My phone rang. Claire's name appeared on the screen, and I felt the familiar flutter of uncertainty that came with every call now. Our relationship was still healing, still finding its footing on new ground. Hey, Dad, am I still good to come by today? Of course, 11 o'clock, right? Actually, I was thinking maybe earlier, around 10. I made Mom's apple cake. Thought we could have it with coffee. Something loosened in my chest. Martha's apple cake, the one she used to make every Sunday morning, the one that made the whole house smell like cinnamon and home. That sounds perfect, sweetheart. After I hung up, I looked around my apartment. I'd been deliberate about setting it up, not trying to recreate the house I'd shared with Martha, not trying to pretend the past year hadn't happened. This was a new space, a new chapter. The photos I'd chosen to hang were recent ones from after, Claire and me at Ruth's birthday dinner, the view from the park near my building, a picture of Martha that made me smile instead of ache. I'd learned something these past months. You can't go back. You can only choose what you carry forward. At 10 o'clock exactly, there was a knock on my door. Claire stood there with a covered dish, her hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes that were slowly fading. She'd lost weight during the trial, the stress carving her down to something fragile. But she was putting it back on now, bit by bit, healing like we all were. Hey, she said, hey yourself, come in. She set the cake on my small kitchen table, and the scent of it filled the apartment immediately. We stood there for a moment, neither of us quite sure what came next. These visits were still awkward sometimes, still carried the weight of everything that had happened. Coffee? I offered. Please. I poured us both cups, and we sat at the table. Claire cut 2 slices of cake, passed one to me. I took a bite, and it tasted exactly like Martha's. Exactly like Sunday mornings and normal life and a time before everything got complicated. You got her recipe right, I said. Claire smiled, but it was sad around the edges. I found her handwritten copy in my recipe box. I'd forgotten I had it. She gave it to me when I moved out for college, said I'd need it someday. She always knew what you'd need. We ate in silence for a few moments. Then Claire set down her fork and looked at me directly. The divorce is final. Papers came through yesterday. I nodded. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it made it real. How do you feel? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I don't know. Empty, relieved, sad. All of it at once. I was married to him for 7 years, Dad. 7 years of my life, and I'm still discovering lies. Still finding out new ways he manipulated me. That will get easier. The discoveries. Eventually, you'll stop looking for them. Will I? She looked at me with those eyes that were so much like Martha's. Will I ever trust anyone again? Trust myself? I didn't have an easy answer for that. I don't know, but you'll learn to try, and that's enough. Claire picked at her cake. His sentencing is next month. The prosecutor said with all the charges, he's looking at 12 to 15 years. 12 to 15 years. Albert would be in his 50s when he got out. His life, for all practical purposes, was over. I waited to feel satisfaction, vindication, something. But all I felt was tired. The restitution hearing is after that, Claire continued. They're making him pay back everything he stole, plus damages. Not that he has any money to pay with. I guess they'll garnish whatever he makes in prison, but that won't be much. I'm not worried about the money, I know, but I am. It was my money too, Dad. Money I earned that he spent on God knows what. That $30,000 loan I co-signed, I'm liable for it. The bank is coming after me. I'd known this was coming too. Had talked to my lawyer about it. We'll figure it out, Claire. You're not going to lose your house. I can't keep taking from you. That's what started this whole mess. Albert thinking he was entitled to your money. You're not taking. I'm giving. There's a difference. But I could see she didn't fully believe it. The guilt was still there, sitting on her shoulders like a weight she couldn't put down. I've been going to therapy, she said after a moment. Twice a week. Dr. Richardson, she specializes in abuse survivors. She says what Albert did. The gaslighting, the financial abuse, the isolation. It's all textbook. She says I need to stop blaming myself for not seeing it. She's right. But I was so stupid, Dad. So blind. How did I not see what he was doing to you? To me? I reached across the table, covered her hand with mine. Because love makes us vulnerable. Because you wanted to believe in your marriage. That's not stupidity. That's being human. Tears welled up in her eyes. I failed you. When you needed me most, I chose him. And when you realized the truth, you chose right. That's what matters. She pulled her hand back, wiped at her eyes angrily. Does it? Does it matter when the damage is already done? We lost months, Dad. Months where our relationship was poisoned because I believed his lies over your truth. We're here now, aren't we? Eating your mother's cake, talking. That's not nothing. Claire stood up, walked to my window, looked out at the park below. I keep thinking about what he said that last day when he came to the house. He said he married me when no one else wanted me, like he was doing me a favor. The words hung in the air, ugly and painful. And part of me, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, part of me believed him, still believes him, because who's going to want me now? The woman who was so blind she let her husband steal from her own father? Who's that stupid? Claire, no, Dad, I need to say this. She turned to face me. I need you to understand. I'm not the same person I was before. Albert broke something in me. Something I don't know how to fix. I stood up, walked over to her. Then don't fix it. Build something new instead, something stronger. I don't know if I can. You already are. You're here. You're in therapy. You're facing what happened instead of running from it. That takes more strength than you know. She leaned against me, and I held her like I used to when she was small, and the world seemed too big and scary. Except now we both knew just how scary it could really be. I'm so sorry, Dad, she whispered, for all of it, for not believing you, for bringing him into our lives, for— Stop, just stop. You have nothing to apologize for. But we both knew that wasn't entirely true. There were apologies needed on both sides, forgiveness to be given and received, the work of rebuilding trust, rebuilding family. It wasn't simple or clean. It was messy and painful and slow. After a while, Claire pulled back, wiped her eyes. I should go. I've got a shift at the hospital in an hour. Okay, same time next week? She nodded. Same time. At the door she paused, turned back to me. Dad, thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on you. I'm your father. That's not something I know how to do. After she left, I sat back down at the table, finished my coffee and my slice of cake. Outside, life continued. Cars passing, people walking their dogs in the park, the world turning like it always did. I thought about Albert, sitting in a cell somewhere, probably still convinced he was the victim in all this. I thought about the money he'd stolen, the trust he'd destroyed. But mostly, I thought about Claire, about the long road ahead of her. My phone buzzed. A text from Ruth. Lunch tomorrow? My treat. I found a new place. I smiled and typed back. Sounds good. Life was small now, quiet. My days were simple, structured. Coffee in the morning, walks in the park, lunch with Ruth or my buddy Marcus, weekly visits with Claire, therapy appointments of my own. Because I'd learned that surviving trauma didn't mean you were healed from it. But it was enough. More than enough. I had my dignity back. Had my daughter back. Even if the relationship was different now, more careful. I had my independence, my choices, my life. Albert had tried to take all of that from me. Had come close to succeeding, but he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated what a father would do to protect his child, and what a man would do to protect his own dignity. I stood up, cleared the dishes, washed them in my small sink. Through the window, I could see the park, the trees just starting to bud with the first hints of spring, new growth after a long, hard winter. I thought about Martha, wondered what she'd say if she could see us now. Probably something about how we were survivors, how we'd come through the fire changed but not destroyed. She always did see the strength in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves. I picked up the framed photo of her I kept on the counter, the one where she was laughing, her head thrown back, completely unself-conscious. It had been taken at the lake, years ago, before the cancer, before Albert, before everything got complicated. "We're going to be okay," I told her picture. "Claire and me. We're going to find our way back to each other. It's going to take time, but we'll get there." And I believed it. Not because I was naive, not because I was ignoring the damage that had been done, but because I'd learned something essential these past months. Survival isn't about pretending the bad things didn't happen. It's about refusing to let them define what comes next. I set the photo back down and looked around my apartment. My small, quiet, peaceful space. This was my life now. Simple, honest, mine. And that was more than enough.